Hello, ladies, and how many gentlemen do you have? Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? Okay, this is such a special afternoon. We're going to be hearing directly from a young woman who I think has broken and shattered glass ceilings, not only here in Africa, but across the world. I don't want to introduce her, but she's going to introduce herself. I'm always going to introduce her. But she's a personal friend, and she's done amazing work. And I think that she has many stories and many values that she can share with all of us today, so that we can also continue to break ceilings in our different roles. I'm very excited to learn from her. I also encourage us to pay full attention so that we can ask questions when we get to the Q&A part of the conversation. So without much further ado, because I'm not the host today, I'd like to introduce my head of marketing and corporate comms, Moyo, who is going to anchor this afternoon.
Okay, thank you very much, Sumachi, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. So we're very, very excited to have a young lady in our midst. Some of my colleagues already told me about how they looked her up, and they're very, very excited to hear from her. Very excited to know how she got to where she got to today, the kind of impact she's making, working with the United States government. And, she's just our neighbor, right next door. And we're very, very excited to have Deniece Laurent-Mantey join us today. So Deniece, I'm very happy to have you join me on stage. Okay, so without much further ado, because I understand Deniece has a very busy schedule, so she'll just take us through one. She'll give us a brief about herself, and then tell us about her journey. Deniece, tell us how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much, and to the entire foundation, the team. We've worked very closely together since the summit, our Africa Leaders Summit back in Washington. So I'm very excited to finally be here with you all. And thank you for the great introduction. I'm very humbled by that. So I'm currently a special advisor at the Department of State in our Africa Bureau, working on some of our Africa Leaders Summit implementation. Prior to that, I was Director for Africa at our White House National Security Council, working on our trade and investment portfolio, and one of the main engineers of the Africa Leaders Summit that President Biden hosted in December. So I spent most of my time working on the summit, the framework of the summit, the announcements, deliverables, etc. But I've been at the State Department for almost 12 years. Started as an intern at the State Department in the Africa Bureau when I finished college, when I finished my master's degree, and kind of been navigating my way through the State Department since graduation. Originally from New York, born and raised in the Bronx, New York, but my parents are from Ghana, and so I'm right next door. From Ghana, and actually I went to school in Ghana. I spent about 4 years in Ghana. I was one of the kids who were born in the States, and their parents threatened you, if you're not a good child that's sent back to Ghana, they actually sent me back to Ghana. So it wasn't just a threat. I was actually sent back to Ghana, and for 4 years. It was a long time. One day in the summertime, Mom was like, "Yeah, we're gonna go to Ghana for vacation," and it ended up being 4 years. So I did some high school in Accra, and then came back to New York to go to college and my master's degree. So yeah, that's a sort of a quick overview of what I do. Yeah.
Okay, so some of us got those threats, but it's just sending you back to the village instead of sending you back home. But it's really, really good to know that despite all of that, you're able to get to where you are today. So I think that's what we really want to know. How were you able to overcome all the different challenges and whatever obstacles were placed in your way? and how were you able to overcome them and get to where you are today, and how can that serve as advice for young African women?
So, and I'm glad that we're almost all women here. And I think me coming to Ghana really taught me a lot, and I think it served as the foundation of what I do now in my career. Both my parents immigrated to New York in the 70s. My father was a taxi driver in New York City. He did that for over 20 years. My mom was a seamstress. She went to school to learn dressmaking. Both my parents didn't have the opportunity to go to high school, in fact, and so we're first generation to go to college. I have 3 older sisters, so 4 girls. And so at a very early age, I saw how my parents raised us in the South Bronx of New York. Went to public school, but they had such a passion and a desire to just make it, right? And that was the foundation for them. They just wanted to succeed. They were immigrants in America. They had children in America, and they really had a desire to make it. Although my mom went to school for dressmaking, was a seamstress, she didn't have an opportunity to have a real education or even learn how to start a business. But I saw her come to Ghana, and what she did was she started a business back in Ghana to train women on how to do dressmaking. It was a small business in her village, and she sort of trained women, and she opened the business, and they learned how to do dressmaking, soap making, different kinds of things that she was exposed to, and that was her way of giving back. But that small business, I watched it literally expand into something great, and now it's a high school back in Ghana, where she's from. It started as a sort of a dressmaking company, so a soap making company, and then it started as a primary school and expanded to now it's a high school, and now she's a daycare. And this is someone who never had the chance to even go to school, but it speaks to what drive and motivation and passion can do if you're really focused on achieving something, and achieving something that you never had the opportunity to actually experience. And that's something that I've always kept in my career. And so when I came back from Ghana and I went to college, I went to Syracuse University, which is upstate New York, and I went to Howard University, which is in DC. That sort of notion of how my parents have really navigated, right, the space of raising young girls in New York, being immigrants, but still finding a way to make it has always been the bedrock for me. And I've used that to navigate different parts of the different positions that I've had in my career. And I think it speaks to, I would say the passion that African women carry, it always multiplies. Africa has the highest proportion of African women entrepreneurs in the world, right? And it's important, yeah, please clap for that. I think it's important. The number of African women entrepreneurs in Africa, I think, is very profound, and that number is high. And if we're able to support women, right, they will multiply things. My mom took a small dressmaking business, which is now an educational complex of primary school, high school, a daycare, etc. And it's a mindset. Women are able to turn passion into almost anything. And I've kept that sort of mentality. It's been a motivation, it's been a drive, and not allowing sort of barriers and limitation to prevent you from attaining different positions. The Foreign Service is, can be a lot more diverse. It is diverse, but there's still lots of challenges and barriers across, and quite frankly, almost every sector in the United States, right? In corporate America. As a young Black woman, you have to sort of navigate those different challenges. But having that for me, and coming from where I'm from, has always sort of helped me, move along in my career.
That's a very beautiful story, very, very beautiful. And I think we see a lot of that at the Tony Elumelu Foundation. We see a lot of young African entrepreneurs who are able to take something very little and turn it into something huge, and the impact on their communities is like out of this world. But speaking of support, speaking of the kind of support that young African entrepreneurs, need to scale their businesses, basically, what would you say, and this is, coming from your own perspective, the Kamala Harris administration or the Biden administration, what would you say is being done to ensure that more African entrepreneurs are being supported in the way that they need?
I think access to finance is one of them, and supporting female representation in the investor space. I think that there could be more females who are investors, who are actually providing the capital and providing the financing in that space. And so in Zambia, where there were a number of pledges that were made to support some of this work. I think, you all know the stats. The youth bulge on the continent is very telling. And there needs to be support to actually create jobs and support entrepreneurs. I was saying this morning that I think Africa's currency is Africa's talent, Africa's innovation, and Africa's youth. And I think it's incredibly significant. That's Africa's currency. It's not in its resources. It's in its talent, its innovation, the youth, the ingenuity from Africa, and quite frankly, the ingenuity and talent from this country alone is phenomenal. I'm always amazed at the amount of talent from Nigeria. I'm very much plugged into the charismatic gospel world and the number of gospel musicians and the number of Afrobeat. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, quite frankly, and it's almost like every week there's a new artist, and every week there's something new. It's like, and quite frankly, it's not going to end. It's only going to get bigger. And so we have to look at Africa's currency, the significance of the continent in its people, and the talent that's coming out of the continent, the creativity, the ingenuity, the innovation. And these two sectors for me, I've been talking about this all day, the creative industry sector and the digital sector. For me, these two industries are very, very critical. And during the President's Africa Leader Summit, we launched a new initiative called Digital Transformation with Africa. And I had the pleasure of really working on that initiative and building up the framework of that initiative. So I think it's really important. The digital sector is going to be a game changer, and Africa is really at the peak of the digital sector kind of booming across the world.
That's absolutely right. Okay, it's working out. Okay, women in tech. It's working out. Okay, so I'm sure you know that the Tony Elumelu Foundation recently signed a $20 million partnership with the USADF, that's the United States African Development Foundation. Oh, okay, great. So we wanted to know, or we would like to know, in addition to the support that we're already providing African entrepreneurs, providing them access to funding, access to digital resources, trainings, and so on, what else can be done between not just Africa, or if we want to centralize it a little bit more? Because at the foundation, we like to treat our horns a little bit. We are the leading philanthropy empowering African entrepreneurs. What more do you think the foundation, the Tony Foundation, and the United States African Development Agency can do to empower African entrepreneurs in the world?
And the foundation is doing, I think, great work. USADF is a great partner. Travis, who heads the USADF, is a great friend, if I may, and has worked closely with the foundation for years. And I think that it's needed, it's necessary. The access to financing, the support, the investments are important. But I want to go back to the talent, and I think that on the U.S. side, we also have a lot of talent as well, and fostering opportunities for greater partnership, just in terms of exchange of ideas and sort of information sharing, I think is great. I have my colleague here, Michael Irvin, from our consulate in Lagos, and getting plugged in with our embassies and our consulates to help support some of the exchange of information and more partnerships, I think would be greatly beneficial. But the financing, the investment, the support on the finance side will always be necessary. But I think creating and fostering more partnerships with different companies in the United States, universities. One of the things that we talked about was our historically black colleges and universities, our HBCUs, and fostering partnerships with our HBCUs and some universities here on the continent, whether it's with the various business schools on the continent and some business schools in the US as well. So fostering greater educational exchange programs to talk about some of the things, because quite frankly, you will notice there are a lot of similarities between perhaps, a business school in Queens, New York, and Nairobi, Kenya. And so creating and fostering those opportunities, I think are would be great. And I think we're looking at ways to kind of streamline those.
That actually hits very close to home. Sorry, 6 seconds.
Okay, so I was saying that hits very close to home because at the foundation we also enter into partnerships with universities. We recently were visited by a team from Harvard, who were on a trek across Africa, basically to see how capitalism is working in emerging economies. And I mean, since our proprietor is the founder of Africapitalism, their trek started from here. So we also have partnerships with research institutes, because it's one thing for us to provide training and access to funding and networks to entrepreneurs, but it's also another thing for us to actually create or see how we can affect policies that will ensure that they have an enabling environment, and we can only do this in partnership with research institutes, universities, and so on. So we're very much aligned with that. It seems like we're really, really, on the same track. But I think I just have 2 last questions for you. The second to the last one is, what would your advice be? If you have to say one sentence to young African women, what would your advice be to them?
Just one?
Just one.
I think we've heard a lot about, oftentimes and in my career, especially when I was serving as special assistant to Secretary Clinton and John Kerry, I traveled a lot with them. And I noticed that sometimes as a young Black woman, you would go to different countries, you obviously wouldn't see people, that look like you. And quite frankly, sometimes you'll see people who also don't assume that you're also representing the US government. Yeah, a lot of times when I traveled to African countries, they assumed that I was on the other side of the puzzle, right? On the host government side as opposed to the US government side. But I think as an African woman, what I would say is that sometimes you have, if there's, and I think you've all heard this, when there's no seat at the table, you create one. You create one, but there's ways of creating the table with grace. And not be otherwise. Sometimes we are accused of being overly aggressive. I'm sure you've heard, some of you may have heard that in your line of work. And so find the balance of, creating a space for yourself, but being graceful at the same time. And it's a unique art, it's a unique art. It's not easy, but understanding that, you also belong there. And your ideas, your passion can also translate into a multi-million-dollar business. Because, like I said, women multiply things. You can take an idea and it ends up, turning into a huge business. And so that's one thing that I would say.
That's absolutely profound.
It's profound. So just to reiterate, 1, apply grace in everything that you do. Make sure you apply grace. Try to find the middle ground. And then 2, I'm trying to put everything together. In addition to applying grace, just ensuring that, 1, you remember that there are people coming after you. There are always people coming after you. So ensure that you're laying the table ground for them. And that when they come in, based on what you have put forward, they have an easier means of entry into the room. So I really want everyone to go back to that today. Thank you very, very much for this. Look, my one last question. And my colleagues some of my colleagues have told me if I don't ask this, they'll probably stop talking to me. But we can't have that. And it's cliche. I'm so sorry. So, Nigerian or Ghanaian jollof?
Awesome question. Definitely an important question, and I think you already know the answer to the question.
Nigerian?
No, Ghanaian jollof. Ghanaian jollof. Because anyone who watches this will end up killing me if I ever say Nigerian jollof.
Wow. Okay, well,
We can accept that. We'll find ways around. We'll find the middle ground. Well, Grace, I'll gracefully accept that. Okay, so I think that's it from us. We're really, really happy to have you here today. We have some of our entrepreneurs, some of our beneficiaries joining online, but I'm not sure we're able to do a two-way interaction with them, but they're really, really excited to see you. So we were excited to see you here with us today. But now I'm going to call on my colleague Iruka, the Director of Partnerships, to take us through the next aspect of the program. So, I'm so sorry about that. Yes, the Q&A. Okay, sure. Okay, so we're going into the Q&A session. So, who would like to ask questions first? Anyone? Yes, please. So, please come on stage.
So you can introduce yourself and then ask questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate your presence. I'm Tosin. I work with S-Line, Executive Director, Chief Operating Officer. I actually appreciate what you actually mentioned, that grace, very much needed, and being able to strike a balance and also forward-looking, saying, oh, when I leave, I hope someone else like me can also comfort that way easily. Thank you so much for that. Well, I actually read some things about what you're involved in. So, so so I was wondering how it's a little different from what we're discussing, but it's about what you do actually. Mm-hmm. So I just want to ask, what is the impact of the African Growth AGOA?
AGOA.
Yes, AGOA. What's the impact of AGOA in sustaining relationships between the US and Africa in terms of foreign exchange availability and ease of trade? So I don't know, what is the impact of that on them?
So AGOA has been around for some years now. We're actually in the process of figuring out how, if we're going to renew AGOA. I don't work specifically on AGOA. Obviously, our Africa Bureau works on the African Growth and Opportunity every year or so. But in fact, this morning we're talking about some of the benefits of AGOA, and it really helps with most women find themselves in fashion, textiles, etc. So that's the focus of AGOA, but I don't specifically work on the AGOA legislation, writ large. We also have agency, our United States Trade Rep, USTR. They focus primarily on the AGOA legislation, the framework, and they work closely with the State Department as well on AGOA.
My name is Blessing. Just press it on for 3 seconds. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Blessing Anna, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. Working with the likes of John Kerry, Hillary Clinton, and the Biden administration, these are the names that rule the world. Okay, they are very big names. I read about you before you came here. So my question would be, advocating for Africa, and you speaking about grace and creating a balance. This is the first time it's coming to me, or that Nigerians or Africans are seen as aggressive. For us, it's our culture. Okay? It's called resilience. It's really very difficult surviving in Africa. And so we really just have to put on different caps. We have to be resilient. We motivate ourselves. Okay, we are self-drivers. So I would like you to speak more on that. How, at what point, where do we draw the line from being graceful and for creating space on the table? Thank you.
So the secret is, for me, there's resilience in grace. There's also tenacity in grace, and sometimes we don't understand that. I have a mentor, Ambassador Thomas Greenfield, who's our U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. She's a very good friend of mine, a mentor of mine. I've worked for her in various different roles. And she always, and so she actually shared that with me about being graceful, and that's how she has navigated, the space in her career. And being graceful doesn't necessarily mean to be timid or to accept the norm. It just means that, and she always tells me one thing, it doesn't cost you anything to be nice. You know, you don't have to be overly aggressive and be a nasty person to get to the next level or push someone down in order to rise. And sometimes as we think that we're being aggressive, we come off as we have to make someone else look bad in order for me to look good. And so I always say, even though sometimes your light is shining in someone's eye, don't dim it. And there's a way to do that. And so I give credit to her because she taught me that, and I have kept that in my mind. During the Ebola outbreak, I was a desk officer for Liberia. It was my second day on the job.
Wow.
And it was the Ebola outbreak. And she was the assistant secretary. And President Obama said, we're sending U.S. troops to Liberia to build Ebola treatment units. And she needed to go to Liberia. And everyone was like, oh, they can't go to Liberia. They have young kids, they have young families. I mean, it's an Ebola outbreak. Do you know what's going on? And she asked me to go with her. And I told my mom was like, you're not going to Liberia during Ebola. You're not going to Liberia? Yeah, my mom was like, you're not going to Liberia? And I said, I'll go. And so I went with her. I was the only one from the Bureau who went with her. We had a plane and we went with some of our Department of Defense colleagues. We traveled to Liberia. And we were in helicopters and, just seeing the dead bodies and the gravity of that epidemic. And, she said to me, she had a mentor who, and she said to me, she really appreciated me agreeing to go with her because I bypassed, right, some of the risks, right, but I knew the value in going to Liberia was for my portfolio. And I saw it as beyond me, right? And that's why I accompanied her on that trip. And she said this is something that she has sort of memorialized in every position that she's had in her career. I was a desk officer. There are others that should have traveled with her. Quite frankly, I was only day 2 on the job. But I went, and that was the trip that actually got me really close to her. So since then, she's been a mentor to me, and I'm grateful for that trip, quite frankly, because I've learned so much from her experience and her values. And so there's tenacity and there's resilience in being graceful. You don't have to be aggressive and put someone down in order for you to shine. And like I said before, if someone feels like your light is shining too bright in their eyes and so you have to dim it, you don't have to dim your light. But you don't dim your light by forcing them to do something. Just control what you can control, is what I would say.
So does anyone else like to ask a question? Only here? Okay.
Hi everyone. Okay. Hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Anya and I work as a policy and partnerships officer at the foundation. I think my question would be around, from a workforce perspective, right? And more so building your career and having worked with people who are very high profile. How have you been able to convince them, with your vision and your mission? How are you able to say, I have this idea, or I have this suggestion, I think we should do it this way? Obviously, while still working with people who, have so many more years of experience than you, who might say, no, I don't want to do it this way, I think we should do it that way. Have you had any challenges, in trying to convince your superiors as well as your peers in terms of, working on something that you strongly believe in, and how are you able to convince them to be on your side? Thank you.
So I think you first have to believe in your talent and believe in what you bring to the table. You have to believe in yourself, I think is the first step. There are going to be times where you have to work 3 times harder than perhaps your colleague. I think this is guaranteed. But I wouldn't be discouraged by that. It's just the fact that because you're the owner of the vision. And so at the end of the day, you have to really just prove that this vision, this idea, this plan that you have is essential. It's important. And one or two people may not see it the way you see it. In fact, everyone may not see it the way you see it, but you're the owner of that vision, so you have to keep kind of being persistent. And the key thing here is in that process of continuing to be persistent, not, okay, are we safe? Okay. In that process, not allowing insecurity to set in. You know, insecurity is such a, it's a very significant thing because insecurity will keep you out of rooms you belong in. And I want you to remember that. Insecurity will keep you out of rooms you belong in. If you are insecure in the sense that because you feel like you are the owner of everything, you're the best at everything, and you're insecure in the sense that you don't want someone else to also be a part of that space, you will be kept out of some room that you actually belong in, you're actually qualified in. If you're insecure in the sense that you don't believe in what you are good at, you'll also be kept out of room that you belong in. And so in that process of persistence and feeling like you have to keep proving yourself, you have to be careful to not allow insecurity to be a barrier to your next level, and continue to be persistent and believing in what you carry. Even if it's a policy idea, I'll share this story. During the summit, we talked about, we really want to get the diaspora really more engaged in our U.S. Africa policy work and finding a way for the U.S. government to play a more formal role in our diaspora engagement. The diaspora is really interested in Africa right now. They're coming back to the continent, they're building businesses, forging partnerships. And so myself and a couple of other colleagues, we created this African Diaspora Council, and the president signed an executive order for us to establish this council, which will be launched very soon. But when we're in the phase of developing the framework of the council and we're drafting executive order, a lot of people didn't understand what this was about. Most people don't even understand what the diaspora is and how the U.S. can play a role. We had to continuously have briefings and engagements and meetings and helping people understand across the U.S. agencies, right? To help them to understand what the value of having a council like that would do, what it will bring to U.S. Africa foreign policy. So I have to say, you're the owner of the vision. You have to allow people to also buy into what exactly you're trying to put forward.
Okay, does anyone else have a question?
Thanks so much, Deniece. Thank you so much. I think that I can speak to your execution focus. I think that the first time we met was last year, July, I believe. Yeah, exactly, summer. And within a few months, we already had the strategy for the U.S. Africa Leaders Summit, and then we executed that. And I remember Deniece meeting, so we would have meetings that period with U.S. agency reps, from across many, many U.S. agencies. And, as with meetings of this scale, we could easily get distracted. So people would bring in different priorities that had no bearing on the meeting at all. And we would spend maybe 2 hours on a meeting we had planned for 30 minutes. And I just remember Deniece always coming in with some focus to the agenda, saying, I respect you, this U.S. agency, I respect you, but we're here to do 1, 2, 3. And if we haven't done 1, 2, 3 by the end of 30 minutes, then we haven't had a productive meeting. So we're not going to assess how productive this meeting is by the time we're spending on this call, but we have to meet the agenda we've placed. And I think that's such a unique characteristic, because a lot of us are pulled into meetings and sessions, and we waste our time. And you come out of it thinking that you've had a busy day, but I don't think you've had a useless day, and that's the truth. if you're not that disciplined to have an agenda and priorities and meet those priorities at the end of the meeting. So that's one thing I definitely learned during that period, and I've tried to put it in my own professional and personal lives. But that's not my question. So my question is, I recently rejoined LinkedIn, and it's now my favorite social media platform. So every other evening I'm on LinkedIn writing, and by far the most asked question is, tell us about your failures. Tell us about your failures. Tell us about when things didn't go well. We know that you've had a remarkable career at CDC, but that's really not what we want to learn from you anymore. We want to see how you navigated downtime, where you felt, one person said, when you felt like the world was against you and you wanted to run and hide, tell us how you emerged from that hole, and tell us how you saw the light again. So they've asked me that. I want to ask you that. What is that big failure that, you had failed yourself, you had failed your superiors, your peers, the world, your family, and you thought it was the end of the road, and how were you able to come back, rebuild even better, bigger, and stronger?
An awesome question. Do I want to share? I don't know.
Yeah, no. Deniece, you have to be vulnerable, and I think that's you have to be transparent.
It's a great question. So I'll share two examples. One earlier in my career, before my career, and then one in my career. So when I finished college, Syracuse University, from New York originally, so I just wanted to be in DC. I knew that I wanted to do international relations, international affairs. I didn't know anyone in DC. I didn't have family there, didn't know anyone, didn't know anything. I just rented a U-Haul truck with a friend and moved to DC. Then I applied for an internship at the Department of State. And I said, I knew I would get the internship because, I had good grades and I was, the Syracuse University International Relations Program is a really good program. I knew I would get it. I had planned my life around getting the internship. So I moved there a month later, I didn't get the internship. Now what do? I've moved everything to DC. I've kind of been mapping my life around that in terms of next steps. I didn't get the internship. I was actually shattered because I didn't know what to do next. And it was either, do I go back to the Bronx, do I stay in the DC area? And quite frankly, for 2 years, I was unemployed. It was a very important transition period because I could have left everything and moved back to New York and missed out on my career opportunity, right? But I decided to stay. In that 2-year period, I applied to almost every single international relations company, whatever, and every NGO in DC you could imagine, from the World Bank to the UN offices to UN, World Food Program, every NGO, the Hill. I mean, every job that anyone comes to DC to do, I applied to it and no one would hire me. No one for 2 years. Then I applied for another internship, the department again, and I ended up getting it. But you can imagine the amount of failure that I felt and disappointment that I felt within that 2-year time frame. And quite frankly, I didn't have to apply again. Because after applying to almost every NGO, no one would even interview me. And these are all people that I now work with, who denied my job application, which is very interesting. I've applied to jobs at the UN, everywhere, and now I work with all of them. But it just shows you that there's a time and season for everything. I learned so much about myself that I didn't know in that 2-year period that has really helped me navigate different parts of my career. I could have easily given up and felt like maybe this is not what I should do. Maybe I should go to New York and do something else, change my career. I had a professor who once told me that I should look at other opportunities, maybe look at a different sector. There's maybe, go to school and be an assistant professor. People told me all sorts, you can imagine all sorts of things, right? And so that's one of the areas. For me, it was a failure, but also a period of encouragement. Because I made it a period of encouragement, right? So I kind of flipped it to really help me build my character and how I value what I'm doing now. The second thing is a little more recent, but as we were working during the summit, we draft papers and we do a couple of things, and there's something that I drafted that I felt like, I didn't put as much effort as I should have put into drafting it, to be honest. And I have 3 boys. My mom, my oldest is 6, I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And I'm yes, and they're boys, and they're very energetic. And you can imagine, it's for a different discussion, but being a mom and having this career, it's a lot, obviously, for another day. So I was at a period where I had just had my last born. He's 1 now. And literally I went back to work. So I produced something that I knew wasn't my best. And someone called me to his office and talked to me about what I had produced. And in fact, it was a real shameful moment for me because I knew that I could have done a better job. And I felt like I had let myself down. It was truly a moment where I really felt kind of broken. And one thing, so I talked about the fact that I apologized. Obviously, I went back and redid it. But, people remember those things. But one thing I learned from that experience was your mistakes are not who you are. You can make a mistake, but it doesn't define you. And to be frank, I made a mistake because I didn't put enough effort in that. But your mistakes are not who you are. You should never let your mistakes define who you are, define your capacity to do good work. Because there's going to be other opportunities to do good work. So I took that, and since then I've done amazing work. The summit was okay. It was a good summit. People say, but there was that, and that moment was a defining moment where I really felt like maybe I cannot do this. There was a lot of competing priorities. It was a very challenging time for me personally with the kids, etc. I just given birth. Can I actually do this? But it worked out well, and it's something that is very, I think, unique for women. We have to balance the level of excellence that we produce with the level of excellence that we manage at home. And that is an art, and it's a gift. And we have to balance that very well and continue to produce excellence in all of those areas.
So would anyone else like to ask a question? You guys don't always get this opportunity.
Okay, so I have a quick one.
All right,
My name is Chineye. I work as a partnerships officer here at the foundation. So, has there been any point in your life where anyone made you seem like you're less deserving of your role because of your gender or anything at all? And how did you address that?
Yeah, many times. And it's in the career, it's outside the career. I think it's several instances. But it goes back to what I said about knowing who you are and knowing whose you are. I'm a big believer, and that has also kept me grounded in my faith. I think that's very important, depending on whatever faith you are. But that, for me, that's been a key factor. And believing in yourself. And so I'm not really fazed by people's opinions of me, but I am fazed by ensuring that I am doing good work. And I'm doing work that's impactful. And I'm meeting the mark. And even in my mistakes, like I said before, it's not defining who I am. Because there's always an opportunity to do better work. And you have to remember that. You can make a mistake tomorrow, but do a better job, the next day or the next week. And so just keep remembering that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deniece. My question is to the last response you gave about how women need to uphold the same level of excellence at work and then also at home. Are there things that you do, or do you have a ritual that you do every day, or something that you do every day that helps you maintain that balance, right? Or things that you can share with us, that we can also imbibe in our own day-to-day activities to also, help us maintain that sort of balance.
Practical things. A very practical thing is I have a to-do list everywhere. It's in my notes, it's in my alarms, it's in my phone, it's in my notebook, it's everywhere. But it just literally helps me remember the things I have to do. I have an alarm for everything. If you look at my phone, you'll laugh. If you literally look at my alarm section, it has a section where sometimes the kids have like show and tell. I have like my son's name, show and tell, is on Thursday. And I have like, I literally write every single thing down because you're gonna forget. So my phone is full of alarms of every little thing from my kids' show and tell to remembering to pack a certain kind of lunch on a certain kind of day. They always have these activities. It's like, wear blue day or something in preschool. It's always something random like that. And as a mom, you feel extremely bad if you're the only one. My son will tell you, one of the days it was, I think, pajama day. And I forgot it was pajama day. My 6-year-old came back home and it was like the worst thing in the world. How can you forget it was pajama day? And I felt so bad because he was the only one not in pajamas. And I cannot afford for that to happen ever again. So every time there's any kind of day, they always have days. I have it in my phone, pajama day, and when I want to travel, when I'm here like this, I have to I email my husband to put it in his phone as well, so he remember to also remember that. So I write everything down. I have a very detailed daily schedule. You have to, working hard is good, but working smart is better. So working smart, and working smart is by, for me, writing everything down. My days and hours are all always allocated to something. But being flexible, that sometimes things may slip, here and there. But writing things down in your notebook, in your phone, alarms, your notes, is something that I value, and I have to keep up with that in order to be able to maintain all the different hats that we, as women wear. The moms, the wives, the career women, and other activities that we, of course, always put on. It's a lot. And so balancing all those different things is writing everything down.
Thank you so much, Deniece. Thank you for your words of wisdom. I'm sure there's a lot for us to go on with today, and we're going to be better for it. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to move to the next session, which is going to be spearheaded by my colleague Erica. So it's really just a vote of thanks, yes. So we can go back to our seats now.
She kept on saying next session. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. But just to say, first of all, thank you all for showing up. Midday of the first day of work for the new week. So thank you all for doing that, and thank you especially for making time for us. Listening to your story, I was amazed at how much synergy has with what we do at the foundation. From your mom's passion to start a business in Ghana and see it as an entrepreneur, from your passion to excel, from your understanding of the importance of relationships, from the knowledge of what it means to be graceful. As women, we have to show up, and sometimes you can't show up in a whisper. You got to kind of take the stage. So thank you for that reminder. We're really grateful that you came here to see us. At the foundation, we're equally very thankful of our relationship with you. When I say you are the US that I see. You too, sir. You are America to us. I'm there. Why aren't you clapping? America in the room. Yeah, so thanks a lot. We wish you safe travels. We will see more of you as we continue our great relationship with the US government. So on behalf of my CEO, my boss, my wonderful team who are all here, and all these powerful women at the Harris Holding family, we say a very, very big thank you and safe travels back.
Okay, so very quickly we'll want to have like a picture opportunity session right now. So we'd just like to have you, Deniece, and you, Michael. So you can stand in the middle. We'll have everyone come forward and just stand like this.